Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the 36-year-old officer now at the helm of Burkina Faso, has just executed the one move every Western CEO and international financial analyst swore would be economic suicide. It's a scene that feels ripped from a political thriller, not a quarterly report. Picture it, while seasoned diplomats were still cautiously mumbling about the importance of dialogue and stability, the captain turned president was decisively rewriting the rules of the game. In a single, audacious stroke, he yanked every major gold mine in the nation from the grasp of foreign corporations. The CEOs of powerful multinational mining firms were unceremoniously handed their canceled permits, their decades of dominance erased with the stroke of a pen. The message was blunt. Thanks for the memories. Predictably, the global markets freaked out. The intricate web of international finance, built on the sanctity of contracts and the predictability of resource extraction, shuddered. Credit rating shops, the arbiters of a nation's financial credibility, immediately and severely slashed Burkina Faso's scores, signaling to the world that the country was now a high-risk, untouchable pariah. The forecasts were dire. A chorus of voices predicting a complete and catastrophic economic freefall. Yet, here we are, 8 months later, and the reality on the ground is defying every single one of those grim predictions. The narrative of collapse has been supplanted by an astonishing story of resurgence. Burkina Faso's new state-owned mining company, a fledgling entity born from this radical nationalization, is already pulling in over 3 billion CFA francs on a weekly basis. The national economy isn't shrinking, it's booming, with growth just clocking in at an impressive 8.5% year-on-year. The very same analysts who had been confidently predicting a financial apocalypse are now quietly, perhaps even grudgingly, scrambling to update their spreadsheets, their complex models utterly broken by Burkinabe reality. The central question that hangs over the Sahel, and indeed the world, is monumental. How did a young military officer, in the space of a single summer, manage to completely tear up and rewrite the decades-old rules of the global mining industry? And more importantly, as the headlines fade and the hard work begins, can this incredible, defiant streak of success possibly outlast the initial shock and awe? To truly grasp the magnitude of this shift, we must rewind the clock, peeling back the layers of history to the very foundation of the modern Burkinabe state. From the pivotal moment the French tricolor was lowered in the capital city of Ouagadougou in 1960, marking the dawn of independence, the nation's destiny remained inextricably linked to the gleaming yellow metal buried beneath its soil. A river of gold, steady and uninterrupted, began to flow out of the country on flatbed trucks. In the early years, its destination was singular and symbolic: Paris, the heart of the former colonial empire. As the decades passed and global finance evolved, the destinations diversified, with the precious cargo later bound for the corporate headquarters and refineries of Toronto, Perth, and London. Over this period, an immense fortune was extracted. Foreign-owned outfits hauled away a staggering 45 million ounces of pure gold, a treasure of almost unimaginable value. In return for this vast wealth, the Burkinabe state received a pittance: royalty agreements, negotiated from a position of profound weakness, were often set as low as a mere 3%. The profits flowed outward, leaving behind a legacy of environmental devastation, including vast, toxic tailing ponds that local children, unaware of the invisible dangers, still swim in to this day. The economic disparity was stark and deeply felt. By 2022, the situation had reached a point of absurdity. the entire national revenue generated from its most valuable natural resource, gold, was barely enough to cover the operational costs of the president's personal guard. The wealth of a nation was paying for the security of one man, while the nation itself languished. The human cost of this arrangement was and remains immense. 1 in every 3 citizens of Burkina Faso continues to live on the razor's edge of survival, subsisting on the equivalent of just $2 a day. The educational system suffered profoundly. In communities located near the massive mining pits, teachers would often dismiss their classes early, a desperate measure to protect their students and their own lungs from the rattling, dust-filled air churned up by the industrial operations. All the while, the grim procession continued. Convoy after convoy of unmarked, heavily secured vehicles rumbled along dusty roads, carrying billions of dollars in gold bars, past villagers who had never held a single coin stamped with their own nation's flag. This was not seen as a crisis. It was simply business as usual, the accepted and unquestioned normal, until December of 2024, when the paradigm began to crack. The political ground in Ouagadougou had become incredibly unstable. The country witnessed its second coup in just 9 months, and once again, a soldier stood at the national podium, addressing a weary and uncertain populace. For the seasoned international investors and mining executives watching from afar, this was a familiar scene, a recurring drama in the Sahelian political theater. They braced themselves for the usual dance, a few weeks of fiery nationalist speeches to appease the public, followed by discreet backroom handshakes and a quiet return to business as usual. It was a pattern they had seen before and had learned to navigate. But this time was different. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was not following the old script. Instead of quiet negotiations, he delivered a bombshell. On March 15th, 2025, Traoré's government issued a decree that froze every single mining permit in the entire country. He then turned to his team of ministers and technocrats and gave them an impossibly tight deadline: draft a completely new national mining code from scratch in 90 days flat. When the new law finally landed on July 1st, its contents sent shockwaves through the industry. It was not a set of gentle reforms. It was a ruthless and crystal clear assertion of national sovereignty. The state, it declared, would now receive a non-dilutable, free-carried stake of between 15% and 30% in every single mining project, with no exceptions. The days of endless exploitation were over. Mining permits, which previously could be held for as long as 30 years, were now shortened to a maximum of 15 years. The paltry royalty rates were tripled, jumping to a new floor of 7%. And in a move aimed at capturing more of the value chain, the code stipulated that by the year 2026, every gram of gold pulled from Burkina Faso soil must be refined inside the country's borders. The reaction from the industry was immediate and furious. Endeavour Mining, a major player in the region, loudly protested the expropriation of its valuable Wagnion mine. The government's response was not a legal brief, but a show of force. Soldiers simply walked onto the site and cited national security interests. When the company escalated its threats, vowing to drag Burkina Faso into a costly and protracted international arbitration process, Traoré's team countered not with words, but with images. They strategically posted photographs online showing Endeavour executives boarding a Moscow-chartered private jet, a subtle but powerful insinuation of their allegiances. The message was received, loud and clear. At the heart of this national project is Sapamib, the freshly minted and wholly state-owned mining company. To get it off the ground, the central bank seeded it with an initial capitalization of 250 billion CFA francs. a significant investment signaling the government's commitment. With this war chest, Sopamib went on a strategic shopping spree, surgically acquiring the nation's most productive assets. First on the list was the Wagnian mine, a prize asset capable of producing 200,000 ounces of gold per year. Its previous owner, Endeavor Mining, had recently valued and sold it for approximately $120 million. The Burkina Faso state took it for a mere $40 million. Next was the Semifo Bungo mine, another significant producer with an output of 130,000 ounces per year. Its license was simply revoked, with the government citing a history of environmental non-compliance. Finally, the state took control of 3 promising exploration blocks south of the city of Bobo Dioulasso. And for these, no check even left the building. The total price tag for this massive consolidation of the nation's primary industry was an astonishingly low $90 million, a figure less than what a company like Endeavor would typically spend on its exploration budget in a single year. The new state miner moved with breathtaking speed. In just 60 days, Sopamib's new management team reopened 2 previously shuttered pits, rehired 4,200 local workers who had been laid off, and began a steady flow of raw ore to the brand new, state-of-the-art Koudougou refinery. Their timing, whether by strategic design or incredible luck, was impeccable. At the moment of the takeover, the international price of gold was hovering around $2,420 per ounce. Today, it has climbed to $2,780 and continues its upward trend. This surge in the global market has acted as a massive tailwind for the entire endeavor. Every $10 bump in the price of gold now hands the national treasury an additional 14 million CFA francs in revenue per day. It's a staggering return on investment and a powerful rebuttal to the predictions of economic ruin. The numbers paint a picture of a dramatic and rapid turnaround. In the entire year of 2024, before the nationalization, the mining sector contributed a total of 560 billion CFA francs to the state's coffers. In just the first half of 2025, under the new regime, the state-owned Sopamib alone tossed 820 billion CFA francs into the national pot. The impact on public finances has been transformative. At this clip, the mining sector is projected to bankroll an unprecedented 22% of the entire national budget for the upcoming year, a share 5 times larger than what it was just last year. This influx of hard currency has had a stabilizing effect across the economy. The central bank's foreign currency reserves, a critical buffer against external shocks, vaulted from $1.1 billion to $1.9 billion in the space of just 6 weeks. This provides the country with enough funds to cover 9 months of essential imports, a level of security it has not seen in recent memory. This newfound wealth is also directly combating one of the most pressing issues for ordinary citizens: inflation. In March, the inflation rate was a painful 12%. It has now been slashed to under 6%, largely thanks to the government's ability to subsidize and import cheaper food. A program paid for with, you guessed it, gold revenue. This boom is not just an abstract figure on a national ledger. It is translating into tangible development on the ground. The National Mining Development Fund, flush with cash, has already begun an ambitious infrastructure rollout. It has bankrolled the construction of 1,200 kilometers of new rural roads, connecting remote villages to economic centers. It has funded the building of 78 new classrooms, addressing chronic overcrowding in schools, and in towns like Yako, it has financed the installation of 3 solar mini-grids, providing reliable electricity that keeps the lights on past midnight for the first time, allowing businesses to operate longer and children to study in the evenings. The impact is felt at the individual level as well. A welder in Bobo Dioulasso, the country's economic capital, can finally afford to buy a house for his family. His paycheck, earned at one of the new maintenance shops servicing the state-run mines, is now triple what the previous French subcontractor used to pay him for the same work. Of course, a powerful chorus of skeptics remains, constantly raising the crucial question: can a group of soldiers and public servants with no corporate mining experience actually know what they're doing? Do they know their cyanide leaching processes from their elbow grease? The early signs, while not perfect, are surprisingly promising. The new management at Sopamib has demonstrated a pragmatic streak, luring back nearly 2/3 of the experienced expatriate managers and engineers it had initially booted out. They achieved this not with threats, but with incentives, offering them 20% raises on their previous salaries and, in a clever nod to modern professional anxieties, explicitly letting them keep their LinkedIn profiles active and public. To solve the complex challenge of running a sophisticated refinery, the state has entered into a strategic partnership. A subsidiary of Rosatom, the Russian state nuclear energy corporation, now holds a 49% stake in the Kudugu refinery in exchange for guaranteed access to crucial spare parts and technical expertise. Transparency and accountability, often the first casualties in state-run enterprises, have also been prioritized. When a cyanide spill occurred and forced the refinery to shut down for 4 days last month, the government fined its own company $1.2 million and, in an act of unprecedented openness, posted the full incident report on a public website for all citizens to see. That had never happened before. For many ordinary Burkinabe, this radical shift is more than just economics. It's a matter of national pride and personal progress. Awa, a 27-year-old truck driver, now hauls gold concentrates from the Bungu mine to the processing plant in Kaya. Her pay has doubled under the new state management. The extra 80,000 CFA francs she earns each month, she explains, is what allows her to keep her twin younger brothers in school, investing in their future. Before, all we were ever told was that our gold went to some bank in Switzerland, she laughs, standing by her truck. Now I see the bars stamped right here in Kudugu with my own eyes. But not everyone is smiling. Some nighttime artisanal miners who operate in the informal economy gripe that the army patrols around the mining perimeters have become much tighter, restricting their access to prospective sites. A few village chiefs, whose communities were promised new health clinics funded by the mining revenue, are still waiting, growing impatient with the pace of bureaucracy. Yet the general mood across the country is not one of protest, but of eager anticipation, a collective demand to build faster. The West and its powerful corporations are watching these developments closely and with a palpable sense of unease. The government in Ottawa officially called the nationalisation deeply concerning. Yet, behind the scenes, Canadian diplomats quietly renewed a $30 million aid package to Burkina Faso, a tacit acknowledgement that security and stability in the volatile Sahel region still matter, regardless of who owns the mines. France, the former colonial power, has been forced into a strategic retreat. In May, it completed the withdrawal of its troops from the Camboinson military base. Just 2 months later, in July, the French energy giant Total signed a major $400 million deal to develop solar power in the country. Is this hypocrisy? Perhaps. More accurately, it is the new reality of geopolitics playing out on a gold-plated seesaw, where principles often take a back seat to pragmatism. Filling the vacuum left by the West are Russia and China, who have been given front row seats to this economic experiment. In the hallways of the Ministry of Mines in Ouagadougou, Russian geologists now outnumber their French counterparts. At the mine sites themselves, the Chinese tech firm ZTE is busy stringing high-speed fiber optic cables to every administrative building and pit gate, building the digital backbone for the new state-run industry. Rumors are buzzing in the capital of lucrative lithium exploration blocks that have already been informally earmarked for companies like South Korea's POSCO. Traoré's team officially brands this strategy as balanced multipolarity, a savvy diversification of partnerships. Cynics, however, see it differently, warning that Burkina Faso is simply swapping one set of landlords for another. Either way, for now, the cash, the investment, and the expertise keep coming. The ultimate question is whether this economic model is sustainable in the long run. Traoré's entire bet is predicated on a simple but crucial gamble. Keep the price of gold above a certain threshold, specifically $2,400 an ounce, for long enough to use the profits to build a more diversified and resilient economy. A cornerstone of this vision is the creation of a national sovereign wealth fund, which is set to launch in 2026. This fund will be legally mandated to receive 15% of every dividend paid out by Sopamib. The plan is not to build glass towers in Dubai, but to bankroll the development of domestic agro-processing plants and solar panel assembly factories, creating jobs and value far beyond the mining sector. Yet significant risks loom on the horizon. The national energy grid is still heavily reliant on imported diesel, with 60% of its power generated by fossil fuels. A sharp spike in global oil prices could shred the refinery's profit margins overnight. The persistent threat of jihadist insurgencies, which continue to poke holes in the country's security and disrupt supply lines, means that security costs remain a real and significant drain on the budget. To counter the ever-present threat of corruption, the government has taken a radical step towards transparency. All of Sopamib's major contracts are posted online, and independent Ghanaian auditors are brought in every quarter to review the books. So far, no smoking gun has been found. The shockwave from Burkina Faso's audacious move is already beginning to ripple across the entire Sahel region, a contagious assertion of resource nationalism. In neighboring Mali, the government has announced it is renegotiating every single one of its gold mining contracts, with a deadline set for this December. Niger's new military government, itself a product of a recent coup, just sent a high-level delegation to Ouagadougou for technical cooperation on mining policy. Even Ghana, long considered the stable, investor-friendly golden boy of West African mining, is suddenly hearing the whispers of capital looking northward. Intrigued by the higher returns on offer, a new buzzword is making the rounds in international mining circles: the Sahelian premium. It refers to the extra margin of profit that investors are now demanding to compensate for the political risk, the chance that their mine might also be nationalized tomorrow. Ironically, this heightened risk-reward profile is proving attractive to a new class of investor: speculative hedge funds, who believe the potential upside of these state-controlled ventures now beats the political risk. Captain Traoré's long-term vision, his 2030 wish list for the nation, is as ambitious as his takeover of the mines. He aims to have half of the country's gold refined at home, up from just 5% today. He plans to use the royalty revenues to fund free primary healthcare for every citizen. He envisions a 1,000-kilometer rail loop linking Ouagadougou to Ghana's Takoradi port, a massive infrastructure project financed by future gold profits. A 100-megawatt solar park near Kongusi is on the books to slash the nation's crippling reliance on imported diesel. And he wants to create a new generation of local experts, by sending 1,000 of the nation's brightest engineering students a year to universities in Morocco, Russia, and China, with their education fully funded by the state. Are these goals lofty? Absolutely. But buried in the fine print of the new economic models is a stunning calculation. Even if the global price of gold were to crash down to $2,000 an ounce, the newly nationalized mines, with their dramatically lowered overhead and operational costs, would still break even. That is a promise of stability and self-sufficiency that no foreign CEO, with their duty to faraway shareholders, ever dared to make. In the end, Burkina Faso's economy is indeed booming after nationalizing its gold. This isn't because nationalization itself is a magic wand, but because a determined and perhaps audacious government seized a critical opportunity. They ruthlessly slashed the exorbitant costs associated with foreign corporate structures. They forced open the books to public scrutiny. And they caught a powerful tailwind in rising global gold prices. The international doomsayers are busy rewriting their economic models, while on the ground, this newfound growth is rewriting the lives of ordinary people. But the real test, the true measure of this revolution, starts now. Can a sovereign African state, on its own terms, turn ounces of yellow metal into hospitals, railways, and classrooms faster than its critics can shout bubble? The story is only at halftime. For anyone who wants to see what happens when a nation decides to be the author, not the footnote, of its own resource story, keep watching Burkina Faso.